Hello and welcome to my presentation, Break Out of Burnout, Mind-Body Solutions for Sustainable Healing. My name is Valerie, and I'm a vitality and vision mentor specializing in Ayurvedic medicine and holistic health. And I'm so happy you're here because I'm here to talk to you about an issue that's becoming more and more prevalent as the world moves faster and faster, leaving many of us feeling more and more behind, overwhelmed, exhausted, and detached from who we are. And of course, that issue is burnout. But this is about more than burnout. This is about our mental and physical health and taking the power of healing back into our own hands. And today I'm going to be talking about Ayurveda, an ancient system of holistic medicine, and how it can help us realign with our natural habits and become more energetic as we truly are meant to be. All right, so let's get started first by talking about the problem, which is burnout. And I think there's a big misconception that burnout is something you can get over by taking a vacation or doing some self care at home. But it runs a lot deeper than that. I'm going to get into the causes in a bit, but first let's see if this is something that we have experienced. So you have probably experienced burnout if you are familiar with the following. If you find yourself repeatedly in cycles of exhaustion and overwhelm, there never seems to be enough time in the day to get everything done that you need to do, and you find yourself giving everything to others while not having enough time for yourself to take care of yourself and to make sure that you are well. And perhaps you're finding that you are maintaining this high functioning persona on the outside while secretly dying on the inside. And a lot of us feel like we can't show that we are tired. So we end up pushing through and being like, yeah, everything's good, everything's fine. And you know that meme of this dog sitting in a burning house? That's what we always end up feeling like when we're stuck in burnout. And in burnout, what often happens is that we find ourselves stuck in unhealthy coping. So, what is that? Meaning, rather than going out and doing things like going out for a walk, exercising, eating healthy, what happens is that we don't have the energy to do those things. We don't have the bandwidth to do those things. So, we resort to things like couch potatoing, scrolling on our phone, binging Netflix, or grabbing a glass of wine after a long day of work. And over time, what happens is that we experience low motivation, and so things become less and less important. Right? We don't want to do things anymore, especially those things that used to light us up. We're like, I am just too tired to do that. And then that becomes loss of our sense of purpose. We lose sense of, why we started all of this in the first place. We lose sense of what's important to us. And over time, that leads to declining physical and mental health. So burnout isn't a temporary issue. It's a real serious one that can lead to really serious repercussions down the line. Now, today I am going to be talking about holistic approaches to managing your health. And so this presentation isn't necessarily going to be for anybody. It's for you only if you want to get to the bottom of what's going on with you, your anxiety, depression, and your burnout, without having to resort to living off of your coping mechanisms. But if you're okay with that, if you're okay with just getting by on Netflix and wine, then go live your life. But if you want to go beyond that, stick around. If you're tired of being high functioning on the outside and suffering on the inside, and you want to actually show up as yourself, you want to show up to life as your joyful self, and you want to get back to a place where you feel confident and energetic, you're in the right place. And you're especially in the right place if you're looking for natural, holistic solutions to managing your mental health. I'm going to be talking about proactive changes you can make in your life starting today. So if you're following me, promise me that if you find this presentation helpful, that you will implement what I'm teaching you in today's talk. and you will see results pretty quickly. Now, I'm going to be talking about why conventional tools aren't bringing you results the way that you want. And I'm going to be introducing the wisdom of Ayurveda, a holistic system of understanding health as balance and harmony. And I'm going to be teaching you how your mind body type, aka your dosha, I'll tell you what that is in a second, affects your mental state. And finally, I'm going to be introducing my signature method for healing, the Vibrant Visionary Blueprint. This is a blueprint for sustainable healing that restores clarity, energy, and trust. So, if you're getting a lot out of this presentation, I recommend sticking around until the end to see if you're eligible for a free consultation with me. And let me introduce myself. So, again, my name is Valerie, and I am a board certified Ayurvedic practitioner with a clinical background specializing in managing mental health, autoimmune, and burnout holistically. My interest in mental health started when doing my bachelor's at Northwestern University, where I pursued a bachelor's in human development and psychological services. But it didn't really resonate with me, the Western model of mental health. And so it took me another decade or so before I committed to the path of Ayurveda and holistic healing as my way of resolving mental health ailments. The issue that I have with the current medical model is that as a whole, we tend to be overdiagnosed, overprescribed, and undersupported when it comes to mental health. And our current model also doesn't take enough into account cultural differences and expectations that we have as individuals in a very multicultural society. In addition, therapy is expensive and slow working. So it's not enough just to go to therapy. There needs to be a supportive system in place for each person to help them restore their ecosystem to be one that's healing and conducive to real recovery. So, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, I'm here to provide that essential missing component of creating a healing ecosystem for yourself. But perhaps what matters the most is that the journey of burnout and out of burnout is also my personal story. So I burned out really early on in my adult life. And it was probably because of a combination of factors. I'd always been hard on myself. I was a people pleaser. I'm a child of Chinese immigrants. I've always had really low self-confidence, and I had trouble speaking up as a kid. And after years of trying to drive myself to try to find my way in the world, by trying to prove myself again and again, I found myself at an all-time low because what I seemed to want to do in life wasn't fitting in with the environment that was supporting me. And I kept pushing myself until my body said, no more. And I realized that I didn't need more certifications, degrees, another productivity system. I didn't need more yoga practices, even. I needed a new relationship with my mind, body, and energy. It had gotten so bad that I, with a ton of friends in my network, was starting to feel really disconnected from my friendships. I had 2 higher education degrees, and I was having trouble finding minimum wage jobs to support me. And I was so low on energy that I started to doubt myself even more, which led to social anxiety and eventually panic attacks. So that journey of struggle led me to learning Ayurveda and ultimately to creating a pathway that integrates Ayurveda's ancient wisdom into modern life. And I eventually pulled myself back from the depths, from crying spells and not being able to get out of bed, from debilitating low self-esteem and not being able to hold a relationship, to getting married. And from scraping by on minimum wage jobs to having my own business, traveling the world, and finding my voice and following my dreams. But it took a journey to get here. And so I hope that if you're in a place where you are stuck in self doubt and survival, that this is the beginning to your path too. So I want to start off by asking you if any of the following sounds familiar. You've done therapy, meditation, and all of these pretty typical self care practices, but you still feel like something's missing. Or perhaps you've tried going on vacation, stepping away from your environment, going to the spa, but realizing that you keep coming back to the same draining situation and it doesn't really change. Or perhaps you're pushing through again and again, pushing through the exhaustion, and what you find is that you're staying wired and tired. No matter how many times or how much you push through, it's never really enough. And you're surviving on coping mechanisms rather than forming the healthy habits that you know that you need in order to make things a little better. So if this is you, you're not alone. Most of us are never taught to truly understand and support our mental and emotional health from a systemic framework. So that's what we're here to explore today. Now, I say systemic because burnout is at the heart of it, not just an individual issue. It is a systemic issue. The system is built to work against you. So, what do I mean by that? In healthcare, education, and other sectors, studies show burnout rates spike whenever systemic pressures increase, such as staffing crises, pandemics, policy changes, because the system scrambles, right, to make sure that it's making up for these changes. And often people are at the brunt of it, right? If somebody leaves your company, you take up the slack and all of a sudden you're doing more work. Or there are systemic organizational imbalances, and those are the norm, right? Expectations of high output and long hours against dwindling resources. And burnout signals signs of collapse of structures in society that no longer support the well being of the individual and the whole. And I think in this modern age, we're seeing a lot of shifts in society that show us that the structures that we have in place aren't really the ones that are going to help us move forward. And unfortunately, seeking help for mental health is still often culturally stigmatized for fear of seeming lazy or weak. So existing treatment models are largely reactive to rather than preventative. So people only go to see a professional when they realize they're too deep in it rather than before it gets bad. But I want you to know that burnout is not your fault. What I present here today, I hope will help bring power back into your hands, because even though it's not our fault, we have the power to respond. There is so much we can do as individuals to make better choices that support our health, mentally, physically, and it starts with awareness first. So, what I hope to show you today is that real healing is possible, and it starts with understanding what caused our mind to go out of balance. And so, what I cover today is an integral component of my core curriculum, and how it blends ancient wisdom and behavioral science and adapts it for the modern mind. So, we're going to get you from self doubt and feeling anxious, fatigued, feeling a lack of direction, and feeling dissatisfied with life to being vibrant, empowered, resilient, well rested, fully self expressed, supported, and connected. So, what I'm about to teach you are the principles that I applied to facilitate in my own healing and transformation when things got rough. And it starts with the wisdom of Ayurveda. So, what is Ayurveda? Ayurveda is an ancient holistic system of medicine over 5,000 years old from India. It includes modalities such as psychological counseling, herbal medicine, psychiatry, and also typical internal medicine and more. But what's important about Ayurveda is that it is a nature-based medicine. And it looks at the human being as a microcosm of the macrocosm. So whatever's happening in your body is happening in the universe too. And anything that's happening in the universe can apply to your body. And so Ayurveda acknowledges that there can be no harmony in the body if there's no harmony in the mind. So let's talk about why you're struggling with burnout and mental imbalance. The truth is, we are disconnected from ourselves. We're overstimulated by constant input. And because of that, we start to distrust our own judgment due to mental fatigue and trauma. So in Ayurveda, there are these three essential causes of disease. The first one is when we are doing what we know might not be good for us, but we do it anyway. An example of this is if we are staying up late at night watching television and we are already tired but we just don't want to go to bed. We've had a long day and this is the only time that we have some downtime to ourselves to unwind. And you know that watching the show is going to cause you to be really tired in the morning for work. But you do it anyway. And you end up burning through some of your sleep time. Well, that causes us to become more fatigued over time. And because of that overstimulation, right, we start to rely on that to get by. And the overstimulation makes us more on edge. And we keep hustling and we keep rushing because the more that we do this, the more of that urgency we feel because we didn't give ourselves time the previous day to actually get some rest. And when we do this over time, we start to distrust our own judgment, right? Because we are more and more stressed, we think that we are the problem. And the only thing that can really fix us is if we go to a therapist, if we go to the bar, and we forget that we had the tools in the first place. We just didn't choose to use the tools. So Ayurveda teaches us that mental distress isn't a flaw, it's a message. The problem is that we're not listening to the message, and that makes our system go out of rhythm. So at the heart of it, health is bringing ourselves back to balance. So in Ayurveda, there's a word for perfect health called swastha. But swastha is a Sanskrit word, and the root of this word means being settled in the self. Most of us live far from this definition of health. In the Western model, or in the Western English language, rather, health is defined as the absence of disease. But that's it. It's like if you're not sick, then you're healthy. That's the assumption. So I really appreciate the Ayurvedic definition because it goes beyond just the absence of disease to whether you truly feel at home in being you. And so what I really think Ayurveda is pointing to when they're talking about health is having the self-esteem to proactively bring ourselves back to balance repeatedly over and over again in the body and mind. Because we recognize that the closer that we are to being aligned with ourselves, the more likely it is that we're going to take actions that are serving us. So for me, maintaining health means making sure that my needs are met, making sure that I do practices in the morning, like journaling, or making sure that I'm in bed by a certain time. Now, how do we know what to balance? That is the key, And that's where Ayurveda offers a really cool perspective. So I want to introduce you to the concept of the doshas. So Ayurveda is largely based off of the concept of doshas, which are the three physiological forces that govern the body or govern the functions of the body. And each of these are kind of like an archetype for both the way that your body functions as well as your mind. So your personality, the way that you get stressed, what you look like, how your body functions, all depends on which dosha is dominant in you. The doshas themselves are based on the five universal elements of nature according to Ayurveda, with those elements being ether, air, fire, water, and earth. Each element represents a function in the universe. Ether or space is what holds all other elements in place. Right? It's the space for everything else to be. Air element is the element of movement. Anything that moves in the universe is governed by this air element. Fire is the element of transformation and metabolism. Anything that is anything that requires transformation, light, heat is governed by the fire element. Water element is the element of cohesion and flow. So anything that requires flow, moisture is governed by water element. And then earth element is the element of solidity and stability, mass. So anything that has mass has an aspect of earth element. So the doshas are how these energies manifest in the body. And each of these doshas are composed of two major elements. Vata dosha is the first type of dosha. Vata dosha is governed by air and ether element. So naturally, it's going to embody the qualities of air and ether. So how does that show up in a person? Well, a person who has a lot of air and ether, aka space, a lot of movement, they're going to be naturally enthusiastic and creative, right? Very excited type of people. And when they're in balance, this shows up, right, in their personality and in their strengths. So they're a really good cheerleader. They're really creative. They love to come up with new ideas. And they tend to be a little bit more light and delicate in the body. They tend to have a little bit drier skin because of the two elements, air and ether, being very light and dry and mobile. Pitta dosha is going to be composed of the elements of fire and water, with fire being the dominant one. And Pitta is responsible for any type of metabolism in the body, as well as eyesight, because eyesight is governed by light, right? So Pitta dosha has very fiery qualities overall. And so in the mind and in the personality, Pitta types tend to be really confident and driven, intense and focused. And that type of person is going to be a natural leader when they're in balance, right? Because they can get stuff done. Not only that, people who have Pitta dosha as their dominant dosha tend to have a very efficient body too. High metabolism, medium build, and sometimes they even have a little bit of that redness in the skin due to some heat. And finally, we have Kapha dosha. So Kapha is composed of the elements of water and earth. And water is that element of flow and cohesion, whereas earth is the element of solidity and stability. Water and earth together, of course, create mud. So it's going to be a very sticky, heavy, dense type of energy and also moist. So in the Kapha personality and in the Kapha mind, that manifests as being caring and compassionate because of that water, nurturing, and also supportive, right? Stable because of that earth quality. And Kapha types, when they're in balance, they tend to thrive in these supportive roles, right? Because they're super stable people. And in the body, they tend to be more sturdy built and they have more moist, oily skin and perhaps softer, larger features. So that's the snapshot of the doshas when they're in balance. So when they're healthy and you're in your element, literally, then you're going to show up as probably one of or two of these types. You can have a combination as well. Now, Ayurveda is all about finding balance. So I also want you to understand what it means for you to get out of balance. So when a dosha is overactive, it creates an imbalance where there's an excess of that dosha. When we start to feel off in the mind, which doshas are out of balance in the mind and body will tell us which energy is out of balance. So rather than our mental mental patterns being flaws, they're more like feedback, right? So if you start to feel the imbalance of vata or the imbalance of pitta, it's a sign that you need to remedy that. And so in Ayurveda, we talk about balancing out energies. Vata, being air and ether, leads to feelings of anxiety, being scattered, overthinking, overwhelm, right? Because there's so much movement in the mind and too much space in the mind. That signals too much vata energy. And you get a very worried type of feeling, very on edge. Now, because of that, when we know there's too much vata energy, all we got to do is bring it back. We got to add in qualities of stability, of structure, of safety, and routines. And in an environment of stability, structure, safety, and routines, vata calms back down. And it goes back to being its excited, enthusiastic self rather than its anxious, nervous self. Pitta, when it's out of balance, is going to ignite in fire, right? There's going to be too much heat. And when that happens, a person becomes really reactive and intense and irritable. A person who has too much pitta in the mind is always in fight and fix it mode. So they might be like crossing their arms and they don't like what's going on. They're really mad. Now, when that happens, it just is a sign that they need to really chill, right? They need an environment where they can slow down. They need to be able to forgive themselves and others. And they need some leisure time to get away from the seriousness of all that hard work that Pitta loves to do. When Kapha is out of balance, meaning there's too much earth and water element, it gets heavy. So rather than being its supportive, nurturing, caring self, it gets to be depressive and numb and apathetic and lethargic, right? Kapha's mind tends to get heavy. And so, if you want to balance Kapha back up to a place where they feel nurturing again, they feel like they want to support others again, what they need to do is activate. They need things that are going to light them up, that are going to get them moving again. It's the opposite of Vata and Pitta. They need exercise. They need stimulation. They need sunlight. So now that you know what the imbalance of each of these doshas are, which one feels the most familiar to you when you're stressed? And what do you think happens when you ignore the initial symptoms and signs of imbalance? So let's say if you're feeling irritable and angry like Pitta, what happens if you ignore that? If you don't do anything about it and you just continue to rage and you continue to drive yourself forward? Well, the result is burnout. And I love this image because in the previous slide, we had our doshas feeling a little bit off, right? They're embodying their imbalanced side. But when we drive ourselves too far, what happens is that we lose the energy, we lose the motivation, and we lose our joy. And we get stuck in this place of burnout. Now, just like before, the doshas kind of determine what kind of burnout you get. So, burnout with vata leads to vata type symptoms like anxiety and hypersensitivity, panic attacks, like I mentioned before for myself, and memory loss and spaciness. And that all reflects the air and space element of vata. Burnout with pitta, right? If you see this image of this flame that has gone up and now it's kind of like a burnt crisp, experiences irritability, a short fuse, and because it's like a flame that um, that burned too quickly, they hit a wall. It's like a sudden fatigue. But also because they dry up their fuel and they lose their heat because it's out, the fire goes out, you also get symptoms of vata, right? Because vata is this air and space element. When there's too much vata, it also causes the flame to go out. So you get things like anxiety, hypersensitivity, and panic attacks also in the vata, the pitta version of burnout. And then finally, burnout with kapha is the most interesting one because it is quite different. And with kapha, it's all about that heavy depressive energy. And so when kaphas get burnt out, they get depressed and they withdraw. And often the chronic fatigue that they feel is accompanied with weight gain. Now, all of these are more extreme, advanced versions of just the simple dosha imbalances that I discussed in the previous slide. But they specifically affect the nervous system, the mind, the limbic system, your emotions, and whatnot. And this is how Ayurveda really looks at burnout as an advanced version of an initial imbalance. And just to keep in mind, you can also have a combination of all three. Now, I know that a lot of people really believe that they could just push through burnout, but there's a real price. There's a real price to staying stuck in burnout. Because as you saw in the previous slide, when you burn out, you're pushing yourself past a wall or past a threshold where it's harder to get back to a place of balance. The further and further you push, the farther and farther away you are from that state of health. And so mood swings become mood disorders. And that initial fatigue becomes chronic fatigue and brain fog. And people tend to suffer poor professional performance or even lose the ability to work altogether. Personal relationships suffer, like it did for me. And the body starts to experience disease in the form of chronic inflammation, weight creep. I've seen everything from autoimmune to blood sugar imbalances. And also, we experience this disconnection from our joy and our purpose and that zest for life that we all desire to experience. And not only that, but it costs us in money, right? Because we're scrambling to make ourselves feel better. But the way that we do it isn't always the most efficient, and it's putting a band aid on a deeper problem. And so many of us end up spending thousands of dollars on supplements and quick fixes, on convenience food. This is one of the biggest ones, on self help books, on self care, on therapy and medications, which can get really high depending on your insurance, and also on trying to fix it with different fitness and wellness memberships. And the truth of it is that, yes, these can all help, but without a system, it is really hard to rein it in to create a structure that supports you. So, what can we do about this? Well, I always tell my clients the number one thing that you can do to start reversing burnout is to learn how to stop and pause. And this is often the hardest thing because undoing burnout isn't about doing more. It's about doing less and knowing that doing less is not only okay, but necessary. When you push your nervous system so far that your body starts to break down, it's the overdoing that is the problem. And so, the first thing that I always recommend to people is that they create a habit of taking time each day to pause. And it could be a brief pause at first. If you are so accustomed to go, 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 it could just be like taking a pause between an hour of work to do some breathing or just step by a window and take a look outside. And just practice gentle, proactive self love and care. You can listen to music or take a dance break, walk around in the park, and take it slow. Because this is only the first step. And only after we're able to give our nervous systems a little bit of breathing room will we have the capacity to add in other things that will help us. So, understanding your tendencies or your type is just the beginning. And that pause as well, it's just the beginning. The real transformation happens when you integrate this knowledge into your life with consistency, support, and structure. So that's where my Vibrant Visionary Blueprint comes in. It's a signature path to that integration because most people stop at learning. They never actually take action, which is why I created this 9-step path to guide healing from the inside out. And I've integrated my knowledge of ancient wisdom and modern psychology to create something that's truly effective and that doesn't just get you from ground zero to functional, but from functional to thriving. In the Vibrant Visionary Blueprint, we work on essentially 3 pillars. The first being mind body mastery, where we embody the principles of Ayurveda to bring ourselves back to a state of foundational health so that we will always have this foundation to build upon. And from there, I bring people into authentic alignment. So, because oftentimes when we fall into burnout, we lose sight of our purpose and why it is that we're here on this earth, that we lose sight of also our ability to look at long-term goals. And so as we bring ourselves back into health, one of the things that I really am passionate about doing is to help people see what's possible for them in the long term. And from there, people get really inspired to try new things, to take on projects that they've been putting off for years. And when they realize they have the power to do that, then we unlock what I call visionary potential, which is your ability to thrive on your purpose, live in abundance, enjoy your life, and feel more integrated with everything that you do. And when you embody this state, you gain access to this natural ability to lead others to do that too. So we incorporate leadership and community in the final pillar of the Vibrant Visionary Blueprint. Now, I did mention that we have some goodies for you. So I have a special gift that I want to give to you today for attending the call. And this is a guide to the ins and outs of what I teach in the Vibrant Visionary Blueprint. It's kind of like my methodology in more detail. And so if you are to scan the QR code, it will bring you to a link to download your free Vibrant Visionary Blueprint guide, where you can self-evaluate where you need to focus on in your own healing journey. And it also includes a guide to each pillar, a self-survey, and access to my custom online dosha assessment, which can get really detailed in what your constitution is, what imbalances you are experiencing, as well as what you should do for those imbalances. And if you're curious about working with me, here's something else that you might be interested in. So the Vibrant Visionary Blueprint isn't just a course, it's a path. It's a path that you are meant to walk over time and integrate. So the place where I provide the space to walk is called the Vibrant Visionary Collective. And I'm relaunching the collective this coming January 1st, 2026. And I would love, if you feel called, to explore joining us on this journey. Inside of the collective, we walk you through how to apply what I talked about today, Ayurveda, psychology, in a way that's simple and empowering and doable in real life. And we don't just teach the wisdom, we help you digest it and embody it. And what I love about the collective is that we've got real people in there doing real things, living real lives. And I don't need you to become a monk. You don't need to learn Sanskrit. You don't even need to meditate for an hour, and you certainly don't need to give up your job. My goal is to help you be functional and thriving in the life that you want to live for yourself. And I do want to give you a little bit of a look into what it's really like to be in the collective with us. So Tiffany's one of my collective members, and she came in not having any energy. She's a high performing director in a really cool lifestyle company. And she felt really out of integrity because while she was trying to teach other people how to live lives to the fullest, she felt like she wasn't showing up in her life doing that. And she was feeling herself, she had gained weight, and she wasn't having the motivation or the time to really exercise, and she didn't know how to make that change. But if you see the picture now, you can tell that she's living an entirely different life and in an entirely different reality. And so she's worked alongside me and the group to make sure that she embodies who she truly wants to be and how she wants to show up for others. And our Vibrant Visionary Collective is for people just like that. We're here to help each other and to help each other learn and grow. All right. So if this spoke to you and you're tired of doing it alone and you really want to make a change, I invite you to book a free Vibrant Vision session with me. In this call, I get to talk with you one-on-one, and we get to see where your energy is being drained, and we'll talk about your doshas, so your unique mind and body pattern and what is causing your imbalances. And we talk about what it would look like to rebuild yourself from the inside out. In this call, I will not be selling anything. It's just an opportunity for us to speak together on your unique situation. And you don't want to have to join the Vibrant Visionary Collective to book the call. This is open to anyone. Now, if we align and you are interested in joining the collective, I will invite you to apply. We're only accepting 25 new members for the January 1st launch of the Vibrant Visionary Collective. So if you book your call before December 23rd of this year, you'll receive special early access bonuses designed to support your healing journey before the new year begins, and it will get you set up for success even before we launch. And finally, I just want to say thank you for sticking it out, for listening to me talk about holistic health. I just want you to know that you don't need to keep forcing yourself to function. There is a way out of burnout, and you don't need to even change the system. You just change who you are within it. You surround yourself with the people that are going to support you, with the structures that are going to support you, and you can make massive changes in how you operate. Massive changes that are going to bring you closer to who you truly want to be and the type of life that you want to live. I believe that you have the power within to bring yourself back into balance. And it's just about making the choices to put yourselves in the environment that's going to help you with that. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch, book that call with me, and I hope to see you in a session soon.